Hello everyone. It is 8th week, and let us finally start our discussion on new trade theory from this week. So, still we are in the process of short review. Actually, not that short, decently long enough review of trade theory. And finally, we are done with our discussion of classical trade theory. And summarizing all the major findings of classical trade theory. Also, last week, we discussed a standard trade model. And we discussed some interesting features focusing on the concept of terms of trade. And finally, from this week, we start our discussion of new trade theory. And as we discussed repeatedly, classical trade theory assumes comparative market, beautiful but unrealistic assumption about the market structure, comparative market. However, from this week, new trade theory assumes more realistic so-called non-comparative market. In comparative market, everybody behaves as price taker. However, here in non-comparative market, we find major players actually influence the market social contract on the economic transaction, that is price. Here we have so-called price leaders who can influence market price just as they like, with their strong market power. And what is the source of this non-comparative market? What is the source of so-called market power? Market power is the power that can influence market price. So only the guy with market power behaves as a price leader. And if these gangsters kind of make influence in the market, that's normal competitive, so-called non-comparative market. Then what is the source of market power, which enables some guy behaves as a price leader? The whole source of market power and all the source of non-comparative market actually start from so-called economies of scale effect. Economies of scale effect. And economies of scale implies when the production scale, the kind of scale size of the economic activity is getting bigger, then there is some new feature we can observe. Mainly, this implies in terms of, in case of production side, so-called average cost is going down with increasing output level. So, if as the scale of the production increases, if the economy's production technology is getting more efficient, and that more efficient production technology can be represented by lowering, lowered average production cost. So, we can describe. So now we are talking about new trade theory. And first we are talking about economies of scale effect. An economy of scale effect can be described that average cost is going down with the output level increased. So this is the features of economies of scale. So usually when the output level increases, and when you label this vertical axis as an average cost, and with the increasing output level, if average cost is going down, that's the case of the economy of scale. But after some critical point, if the average cost is again increased, with the increasing output level, this would be the case of so-called diseconomies of scale. So this area where the average cost is going down with increasing output level, this is the case of so-called range of economies of scale effect. Effect can be observed economies of scale. However, if the average cost is going up with the further output increase, this would be the case of so-called diseconomies of scale. And then, when do we observe this economies of scale effect? There is average cost going down with the increasing output level. Simply by looking details of the average cost. Average cost is what? Total cost divided by output level. And total cost is what? Fixed cost plus variable cost is divided by output level. And variable cost is usually marginal cost times output level. So we will end up with so-called average fixed cost plus marginal cost. This is what average cost. So when will we have a strong average cost economies of scale effect among the total cost? Among the total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. So among the total cost, when the share of fixed cost is larger, then as the output level increases, the so-called, this is what average fixed cost. This average fixed cost will go down more sharply. So when do we have this economies of scale effect? Say, usually when the share of fixed cost among total cost is larger, it's more likely that we might have observed economies of scale effect with the increasing output level. And so think about the case when the marginal cost is big enough and the share of fixed cost is relatively small, and then even if the increasing output level, the eventual impact on the average cost, that is kind of the force to push every cost to go down, will be relatively limited. So, however, when the share of marginal cost is relatively small, while the fixed cost is big enough, then with the increasing output level, the decreasing rate of the average fixed cost can be much more visible and explicit. Then, what is the feature of the economy industry where the share of fixed cost is larger? And what is the major kind of actual component of fixed cost in the leading economies these days? For example, digital service industry, big tech industry. In the United States, 5 big tech, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, all those big tech companies, when you look at the cost structure of those leading industry, we can see among the total cost, fixed cost is almost more than 95%. And what is the also major component of fixed cost of those leading industry, big tech industry, Amazon, Microsoft, Google? Almost 100% of the fixed costs in those leading industry is what? R&D cost. So most of the fixed cost can be explained by mainly heavy R&D cost. And what is the industry where the R&D cost takes the majority of total cost? That's so-called technology intensive industry, so high value added industry. So in other words, where can you have this kind of skill effect more when the share of R&D among the total cost is larger? So altogether we can say this is technology intensive. Technology intensive industry shows more higher trends of the probability of economies of scale effect. And also this, so we are talking about new trade theory. And we are talking about economies of scale effect. And we can also categorize economies of scale into two categories, two types, so-called external economies of scale, external economies of scale, and the other one would be so-called internal economies of scale. And this is external to what? And this is internal to what? Internal to each individual firms, external to each individual firms. Economies of scale effect itself is, as we discussed before, when the average cost going down with the output level increase. This is the economies of scale. And this external economies of scale is this feature can be observed not at the level of the individual firm, but at the level of total industries as an aggregation of each individual firm. So external to what? External to individual firm at the industry level. And this is internal economies of scale. Is this economies of scale effect can be observed at the level of each individual firms. So when each individual firm's production level is increased, and when they can experience this decreasing average cost, that's the case of internal economies of scale. That would be the case of real big conglomerations like the Samsung Electronics. When Samsung Electronics increases their output level of semiconductors, already Samsung Electronics has invested huge amount of money. And so when they increase their output level in the production of semiconductors, definitely they will observe the average cost going down. Then we can also think about the other interesting example of external economies of scale. Even if the size of each individual firm is small enough and very small enough, still those aggregated industry, total industry aggregating all those small firms actually shows this decreasing average cost with the output level. So when simple example would be, we can think about the case of the Insadong. When you visit Insadong, you can find kind of tons of very many very small size shops selling all different types of antique and also some items that might be used for the Oriental arts, painting, brushes, and some papers that is used in the Oriental painting, and all different types of artifacts and antiques. And even though each size of individual firm is small enough, whenever we need to buy something antique and some items related to Oriental art, we just come to think about we need to visit Insadong. Not because of those individual shops, but the fact that every different shops are aggregated in Insadong, and we can find almost everything related to antique or items related to Oriental arts. So since due to that kind of aggregation effect, everybody simply visit Insadong whenever they need to purchase antique or items for Oriental arts. So those external economies of scale effect can be observed mainly due to the so-called spillover effect among those small size firms and shops in case of Insadong. Yeah. And so remembering that there are two types of external economies, let's think about what kind of interesting features we can find. So once again, here we can see when the output level increases, economies of scale effect says the average cost is going down. And so remembering this feature, U3 theory, and when you think about the effect of economies of scale, we can figure out fairly interesting feature of so-called infant industry protection theory. Infant industry protection theory. When infant industry protection theory might be helpful and successful, and when infant industry might be pure waste of resources and actually further distortion of economies. So let's think about the case of the example of Korean semiconductor industries. And this is an output level, and this is price and also an average cost level, vertical axis. And let's say so-called economies of scale effect can be observed in the industry of semiconductor. And let's say this is the earlier average cost of the first mover in the semiconductor industry, let's say Toshiba, or of Japanese producer of semiconductor. And world demand curve can be described. Let's say this is a world demand curve. World demand curve. And before Samsung jumped into the semiconductor industry, let's say with this downward sloping average cost curve, initial equilibrium in the semiconductor industry was that if average cost is higher than the demand curve is what? The combinational point where consumers are ready to pay for each level of output they consume. So if demand curve is located at lower than average cost, what consumers' reservation price to pay for the product is actually lower than production cost, so nobody will purchase. And if the average cost is lower than the demand curve, there is a combination of reservation price. Definitely consumers are happier to pay higher price than the output level. So firm will operate till this initial equilibrium. So this is the initial equilibrium output level of semiconductor produced in the world market, and this is the initial price level of the semiconductor in the equilibrium level when whole market is dominated by Toshiba. However, let's think about the case that Samsung Electronics has started to its semiconductor business at the very initial stage, producing this amount. And when they produce this amount, their average cost has been something like this, but this is the current point. However, if Samsung Electronics increases its output level, the potential average cost might be this one. And let's say technologically it has been almost certified. Then in this case of the infant industry, which produced originally, let's say this is an original production level of Toshiba, but in case of Samsung, this is the original output level at the current point. And at this amount of the output level, their current average cost level is here, Samsung, and they have to at least charge this level of price to not to make loss. And we can see this current price is much higher than incumbent firm of Toshiba. So there is no room for Samsung Electronics to penetrate into the market. However, let's think about the case that Korean market and let's say this is the vertical axis and Samsung's potential current output level is here. Every cost, the potential output level can be described here. And let's say this is a world demand curve. And let's say Korean domestic market demand can be described with this domestic demand curve. Let's say Korean. This is, let's say, demand curve for semiconductor in Korean market. Then, if given the domestic demand curve in Korean market, if instead of opening, in this case, if free trade is allowed and Korean government decide to import foreign semiconductor with no tariff, then definitely even for Korean market imported semiconductor produced by Toshiba would be much cheaper than the current level of, let's say this is current level of the Samsung's production cost and price level. So there is no reason for Korean consumer to purchase much more expensive product produced by Samsung than imported Toshiba. However, what about case whole domestic market is completely protected and it is only protected for the domestic supplier? In that case, since the domestic market is fully protected, Samsung will increase its output level from current level. Since it is a fully protected and guaranteed market, definitely Samsung will try to, with no competition with the foreign incumbent firm, Samsung will increase its output level to here. And this would be the case of Samsung output level after the domestic market productions. And after, when the Samsung has expanded its output level, according to its kind of technology level, production technology level, with the guaranteed Korean domestic market, they can produce and supply Samsung's new semiconductor at much cheaper price, which is also equivalent to average cost of Samsung. After the productions, Samsung has experienced so-called strong economies of scale effect with the reduced average cost level. They can charge at much cheaper price than Toshiba. Then, is there any reason for these world consumers to purchase this more expensive Toshiba while much cheaper with the same quality Samsung semiconductor is available? All kind of world consumers will rush to Samsung to purchase these much more efficient firms. Then eventual actual output level will further increase to the level of to saturate the whole global demand. So eventually, in the end, Samsung will expand its output level to satisfy the whole global demand, and the eventual price level will be much cheaper at this level after satisfying the global demand. So this is the story explaining why so-called infant industry protection might improve social welfare. Currently is produced at small scale, and its current production cost and price level is higher than the incumbent firm. However, this currently infant firm has strong kind of potential technological advantage than the incumbent firms. This is average cost of Samsung, and this is established confirmed production, but at the point of Samsung to produce only this amount of output, it still stays as an infant with a small scale of output level with the higher production cost. But when it grows up with expanded scale level, its actual production cost might be much lower and much kind of so-called higher technological so-called Samsung even at the level of this infant level, this is the case of so-called infant level. Infant level. But however, this infant output level is increased to grow up to an adult, grown up, then we can see from the two different average cost level, Samsung, although it is infant at this level, had a very strong potential higher technological efficiency. So, although infant at current level, as long as this current infant industry has strong potential technological kind of leaderships or efficiency, then this potential firm with higher technological efficiency should be protected. And then eventually the whole global world consumer can enjoy much lower price level than the incumbent firms. So the story of infant industry protection theory depends on what types of infants should be protected. Infant whose potential technological efficiency is higher than the incumbent firms. And this is the kind of example of successful infant industry protection case. Then what about the infant industry protection policy that has been adopted in Latin American regions, which turned out quite a miserable outcome? In those cases, in Latin America, they protected not only this potentially more efficient firm than the incumbent firm. What they have protected is infant industry, which shows much inefficient this is what we can saw the case of inefficient, currently inefficient, and even potentially inefficient infant firms, average cost infants, average cost. This would be the case of Latin American infant industry protection policies. So let's say this is the demand curve for the Latin American market, and then with the protection policy, at least this level of output level has been protected and produced by Latin American firms with the infant industry protection policies. Then what will happen if this protection is removed by the government or protection is somewhat loosened? Then by the market force, this inefficient firm will be automatically removed and kicked out from the market by the incumbent firm and even by new competitors like the Samsung Electronics and new entrant firms. So once again, we summarize message. Which types of infant industry should be protected? Infant industry with strong potential higher technology efficiency. It kind of should be protected. Then what about the firm with less efficient infant firm? It should be simply laid off and be kicked out from the market. To keeping this inefficient firm itself is an absolute distortion of the economy and a waste of the resources. Okay, that's one interesting feature we can think about. And then let's move on. More interesting story, getting to the intra-industry trade story. So we are talking about new trade theory. And we are done with infant industry, so-called infant industry protection can be only rationalized by economies of scale effect. When infant industry shows strong potential economies of scale as a strong potential technological efficiency, only those potential technologically efficient infant industry should be protected. All the other infant industry actually should not be protected, actually should be kicked out from the market. And the more interesting story is intra-industry trade. Again, we are talking about the case of a non-competitive market. And as we discussed before briefly, a non-competitive market have several different types of competitive market. The extreme case would be monopoly. And this is one single guy dominate everything. Mono means just one single. And duopoly, two guys, poly, dominate everything. Oligopoly, a few guys, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 100, even 1,000. As long as the number of players is fixed and no entry is allowed, that market dominated by a few fixed number of the player gangster is the case of oligopoly. And the other types of non-competitive market would be so-called monopolistic competitive market. Monopolistic competitive market. What is the difference between all four types? Very strong difference between above 3 types and the remaining guy is here for the above 3 guys has very strong and rigid entry and exit barrier. Contrarily, here in monopolistic competitive market, this market can be characterized, featured as so-called the market where free entry and exit is allowed, even if all 3 firms has strong market power in each different market. So in case of monopoly, just literally one guy dominate and no second guy can even think about to enter the market. So most common cases would be so-called natural monopoly, with the case where this economies of scale effect is very strong enough, and eventually there might be no competitor survive in the market. And one real example would be so-called computer operating system in commercial computers. For example, Microsoft Windows is the case of the natural monopoly, playing the monopoly power in the commercial operating system market of the computers. Do we have any competitors of operating system of the computer in commercial market, there is no competitor at all. So that's the monopoly case. And duopoly would be just the two guys dominate the whole market. And the good example would be the kind of passenger airplane industry. Currently, Boeing and Airbus dominate the whole global market as a duopoly. And oligopoly would be the case of majority of the leading industry like automobile industry, shipbuilding industry, chemical industry, when there is a strong technological entry barrier and also legal entry barrier. And so nobody can freely enter and exit due to those strong technological barrier or institutional barrier. But in case of monopolistic competitive market, still in this case, each player, a producer, exercise commands strong market power. That is that they can control their price as they feel like. But the other strong difference is the entry barrier is not that strong as these three examples, and eventually it's equivalent to the case of free entry and exit. So there is not that much strong technological entry barrier and exit barrier. And a typical good example would be differentiated products. And some stupid example for differentiated product might be toothpaste. For example, in my home, there are three guys, me, my wife, and my kid, my daughter. Even we have just three guys. In our bathroom, we have three different types of toothpaste. And say, my daughter uses some toothpaste with some flower flavor, and my wife uses some salty taste flavor. For me, I'm just kind of dull guy. I'm using just a plain toothpaste. And what will happen if my daughter's toothpaste, there is a toothpaste with the flower flavor, disappears from our bathroom? There's a family crisis. She will cry and she will resist his toothbrushing, causing lots of problem in my family. What will happen to my wife if that salty taste toothpaste is gone? Another family crisis. Same to me. So even if difference of toothpaste in terms of what technological entry barrier, it's not an entry barrier at all. Just adding some additional flavor or not, that's technological nothing. But the consumer loyalty to each different types of differentiated products is really life of this serious consumer loyalty. So each different producer of different types of toothpaste, since they know that consumers addicted to each different types of differentiated product, shows a real serious loyalty to that differentiated products. They behave just like the monopoly firm to those loyal consumers. And in that context, they have market power. However, in terms of entry barrier, there is nothing like that we can observe in these three types of market. So eventually, it's as long as what salty taste toothpaste makes a big profit, definitely there might be another incumbent firm jumping into the production of salty taste. Then what will be the eventual outcome? This free entry and exit condition eventually induced the market condition quite similar to competitive market with zero profit. So this is equilibrium conditions of this monopolistic competitive market, while each firm definitely exercise monopoly power, market power over its differentiated products. And explaining intra-industry trade, this is literally trade happen within the industry. That is, as we discussed before, the trade pattern between Japan and South Korea is what typical intra-industry trade. The biggest export item from South Korea to Japan is semiconductor, and the biggest import item from Japan to South Korea is also semiconductor. They are exporting and importing the same semiconductor. In the same industry, trade happens. Why that kind of stupid activity is going on? We will figure out using this assumption of monopolistic comparative market. Why monopolistic comparative market instead of these three types? Since it is much more convenient using this monopolistic comparative market, where we can still observe strong economies of scale effect, but also with the model types, we can make our discussion in much more explicit and neat way. Yeah. So we are talking about new trade theory. And now we are talking about intra-industry trade. And we have assumed market structure basically having the strong economies of scale effect. So we will assume monopolistic comparative market. Comparative market. And as we have seen here, in monopolistic comparative market, no entry and exit barrier. In other words, free entry and exit in these market structures, mainly producing differentiated products. And we can describe the market structure with this simple market demand curve, demand functions. So in this monopolistic comparative market producing differentiated products, the upper level amount of sales made by the individual firm producing differentiated products in monopolistic comparative market, demand function can be defined in this way. Demand for individual firm producing differentiated products would be basically total market size divided by the number of the competing firm producing differentiated products minus price elasticity, and this is the price charged by the that's individual firm producing differentiated products minus market average price. So it implies basically if individual firm producing differentiated products charge the price level equal to the market average price, then this term will be canceled out as a zero. Then eventual amount of kind of sales, amount of demand for this individual firm will be same as total market size divided by the number of the competitors. Quite intuitive definitions. And just based on this intuitive definition of the market demand function for individual firm producing differentiated products, we can define the market equilibrium of monopolistic competitive market, and then we will see what would the impact of the trade which happens in this market economy where they are producing differentiated products in monopolistic competitive market. And basic kind of condition of market equilibrium condition would be market equilibrium condition would be two conditions. First, due to this no entry and exit period, in other words, free entry and exit implies what? Zero economic profit. Zero profit condition would be first equilibrium conditions of first equilibrium condition in this monopolistic competitive market. And second equilibrium condition would be so-called always, even in this market, every player behaves in rational way. That is, producer maximize their profit. What is the profit maximizing conditions? They behave in a rational way, trying to maximize their profit by producing at the point where their marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. This is what profit maximization condition. They behave rationally, max condition. And simply defining these two equilibrium conditions, we can show what would be the impact of international trade in this monopolistic competitive market. So again, we are talking about intra-industry trade. And first equilibrium condition is what? Equilibrium. First is what? Zero profit condition. And zero profit means in equilibrium price should be equal to average cost. And average cost is what? Total cost divided by output level. And total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost divided by output level. And variable cost is marginal cost times output level. So we will have average cost is average fixed cost plus marginal cost. And in equilibrium, we know that this output level will be equal to the total market size divided by n in equilibrium. So this equilibrium level will be substituted here. So in equilibrium, zero profit condition says price should be equal to, when this term is substituted here, NF divided by S plus C. This is what? Zero profit conditions. And second equilibrium condition is what? Profit max conditions. That is marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. And what is marginal revenue? Marginal revenue is how total revenue is changed, with respect to change in the output level. And total revenue is what? Price times output level. And how this term is changed with respect to the change in the output level. This is what round notation to show the partial derivative. And from your middle school math course, you learn how to differentiate this multiplied term with respect to f. First, we take the derivative differentiation with q, and then we will have p term here. And second, we will take derivative keeping this term as constant and times price, taking derivative of price with respect to q. This is what? Marginal revenue. And from our earlier definition of this demand curve, we can rearrange. Let's multiply every term here. Q is what? N over S plus, or we can do it this way. And removing this term, So if we move this term to left-hand side, Q over S equal 1 over N minus BP plus B times average cost. So this is what demand functional form. And when we kind of rearrange to so-called inverse demand functional form, inverse functional demand form means we simply rearrange this demand function to P. So when we rearrange to this demand function to P, we will have BP 1 over N plus BP, and this term move to the right-hand side, 1 over S Q. Yeah. And then when we divide this term by B, every term by B here, and this B term will go out, and B will be added here. And so inverse demand functional form can be simply rewritten as P is P bar plus 1 over Bn minus this would be a slope of the demand function. Where did he get this stupid function? Simply rewriting this demand function. So we can see that this is actually the function of P. So given this inverse demand function, what will be the rate of change if this output is changed? So given this one, when you take derivative of P with respect to Q, we will have only this term left, right? Minus 1 over PS. Yeah, so when you substitute this term to here, this is, we have seen minus 1 over PS. When you substitute this term, that's the marginal revenue. So marginal revenue is equal to P plus minus 1 over PS times Q. And in equilibrium, say we are talking about equilibrium conditions. In equilibrium, this marginal revenue, and in equilibrium, this what amount of output, amount of sales, this would be actually same as what total market size divided by N. So when we substitute this term to here, the marginal revenue can be described as P minus 1 over Bn. So this is marginal revenue. And this profit maximization condition is what? Marginal revenue should be equal to marginal cost. This is marginal revenue. Should be equal to marginal cost, which is C. So what is the profit maximization condition? This would be the profit maximization condition. And once again, we can rewrite this as inverse demand functional form. P is C plus 1 over Bn. This is profit maximization conditions. Then, if we simply kind of describe these two equilibrium conditions in two-dimensional diagram of the market equilibrium, saying that horizontal axis represent the number of firm N, and vertical axis shows the price, and this what zero profit condition can be described in this two-dimensional diagram. When N is increasing, we will see P is also increasing. All the other variable is assumed for the time being as fixed. So we can say, and this would be kind of vertical axis, vertical intercept. So average cost curve can be described. This is what zero profit condition. Zero profit condition. And this profit maximization conditions is when N is increased, the denominator increase, and P will go down. So we will have a downward sloping curve we call PP curve, profit maximization, profit max conditions. And we can see before international trade, we will have market equilibrium where this zero profit condition and profit maximization conditions are satisfied simultaneously. So this would be the equilibrium number of the firm producing differentiated products, and this would be what equilibrium price of the differentiated product produced in the market, and this would be actually equal to the average cost before international trade. And then what will happen if this economy jump into the world of international trade? And that feature, impact of international trade, can be explained by the looking at what types of variable between these zero profit conditions and profit maximization condition, what variable will be influenced? First, let's see the zero profit conditions. When we focus on the direct impact of the international trade, fixed cost itself, which reflects the technology itself, will same as before. Marginal cost will remain same as before, and trade itself does not really kind of directly impact the number of firm producing, domestic number of firm producing in the domestic market. What only is affected by international trade is by intra-industry trade. Intra-industry trade implies if Korea and Japanese toothpaste industry open their market, then Korean toothpaste firms producing salty taste toothpaste will have additional market in Japan. So its market size will be increased. Then what about the, let's say, the Japanese toothpaste firm producing what also their own special flavor, Japanese style toothpaste, their own market size is increased too, including the Korean market size. Therefore, the direct impact of the market size itself is, in addition to Korean market, they have additional Japanese market. So altogether, this is increased amount of the market size after intra-industry trade. We can see this total market size itself will be increased after international trade. So what will be the impact of intra-industry trade? All the other variables will remain same as before, but market size itself will be increased significantly by the size of Japanese market. What about this variable C? B is the parameter describing the price elasticity of demand, a number of domestic firms, same as before. There is no change in the profit maximization curve here. PP curve will remain same as before, only when, only this term. This can be rewrite. P is F over S times N plus C. C is the intercept, and if S increases, we can say in this two-dimensional diagram where the horizontal axis for kind of label of horizontal axis is N, the slope itself is getting flatter for this zero profit condition. So after international trade, what we will have is this is original zero profit condition. After international trade, we will have this new zero profit condition with this slope getting flatter with increased market size. So this is original market equilibrium. This is what new market equilibrium. After this international trade, what we observe here is amount of the variety of the product that would be available in the market is increased from original number of variety of differential products. This is N1, which is definitely higher than earlier number of variety produced in differential products. Then what about the equilibrium price level and average cost level? This is new price level after international trade, which is equal to lower average cost. So with the economies of scale effect, price itself has gone down and average cost itself has gone down. And this economies of scale effect has happened mainly due to what? This increased market size has reduced what? Average fixed cost. And therefore, average cost itself has gone down mainly due to economies of scale effect. So we can summarize that we are talking about intra-industry trade. Intra-industry trade, as we have seen in our earlier discussion, after trade, with increased market size, number of variety increase, and average cost go down, increases. So-called, this is what? Number of varieties of differentiated products. So intra-industry trade increases number of variety of differential products and reduces equilibrium price, which is equal to average cost due to economies of scale effect. So what is the source of gains? So-called gains from trade. In this, gains from trade in this intra-industry trade case. In case of classical trade theories, gains of trade came from what? So-called resource reallocations, in the way that production factor allocated in earlier case, production factor allocated in inefficient sector, there is an economy with disadvantage, has been reallocated to a more efficient sector. There is a sector with comparative advantage. And that kind of resource reallocation in more efficient way was the major source of gains from trade in classical trade theory. However, here, what's going on here? In intra-industry trade, no more reallocation, simply mainly due to this economies of scale effect, which can be mainly found in technology-intensive sectors, high value-added sector with a large share of R&D investment, ending up with a large share of fixed cost in those industry, simply by expanding the market size, by trading, opening its market with respect to other country producing the same differentiated products, that they can increase the chance to enjoy economies of scale effect and eventual increased number of variety of differentiated product, and the lower production cost provides higher welfare gains. They can purchase the same differential product at cheaper price, good for consumers' utilities. And we assume in most cases, the more different, diverse types of product we can consume, the happier we will get. So due to these two factors, these two factors would be major source of gains from trade in intra-industry trade theories. And next week, we will briefly discuss about other interesting features of so-called winner-takes-all features, which can be observed in this intra-trade in the market with non-competitive market and a short preview. So we will see winner-takes-all effect. That is, we have seen that in our earlier description of the demand curve, yes, we redefined this demand function in this way. And this is what so-called demand functions for individual firm producing differentiated products. And we have seen that the impact of the intra-industry trade is what? Market size itself will be increased. And as a result, amount of the number of variety will be increased. And the impact of the trade would be intra-industry trade will make this market size to be increased, and as a result, slope of this demand function altogether going down. Why? Due to this increase in the market size, and also the intercept of this demand function will be also decreased. Why? This number of variety, which is in the denominator of this term, goes up. So we can see that before intra-industry trade, let's say this is the demand up level, price level, and this is so-called demand curve, original demand curve. Then, after intra-industry trade, this slope is getting flatter with the intercept going down. So after international trade, we will have, this is original slope, and slope intercept will go down, and slope of the demand curve will get flatter. So this would be new demand curve after intra-industry trade. What will be the impact on general market and income reallocation with this flatter demand curve? It would be on homework for you. We will very briefly go over next week and also move on to next more interesting issues of multinational corporations and the globalization theory, like including outsourcing, when outsourcing strategy is an efficient strategy, and when so-called onshoring strategy is more efficient strategy, especially considering latest development change and trade shock kind of provided by amazing gentleman Donald Trump. Okay, and let's say that's it for today's discussion, and we will continue our discussion next week. And see you next week.